Webster's dictionary defines community as a group of individuals.
Stop! Webster's dictionary defines? That's the Jim Belushi of speech openings.
All right, whatever. It's the anti-sitcom. It's Dan Harmon's first major foray as a showrunner. It's everyone's favorite cozy little show that has so many jokes per minute that you'll literally miss it if you blink. That's right, 6 seasons and a motherfucking movie, baby. It's happening. Community as a show just really snuck up on me. Knowing nothing except the plain title graphic, I was expecting some typical sitcom with quirky characters along the lines of like New Girl and How I Met Your Mother. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with those shows. It's just that sitcoms have a basic formula that works, which is why Community hits so hard as the antithesis of sitcoms. After Netflix made the entire series available right at the height of quarantine, so many new people finally discovered this gem of a show, and I couldn't be happier that the mythical movie has finally been greenlit. So, if this is your first time in one of these videos, I'll be taking the top 10 episodes with the highest view counts from all of our reactions, so this is just as much your list as it is mine. We're going to be probing a little deeper.
It's okay!
To find out why these episodes endeared our own personal community, as they're some of the most rewatched episodes, not only across our reaction videos, but all reaction channels. Episode 1 won't count because premieres tend to get an unfair inflation in views as everyone floods to those in pure hype because their favorite show is being watched. So without further delay, I'm Suraj from The Normies, not Abed like my friends seem to insist, and it's time to count the reasons I should stay. Oh, that's so cheesy. Number 10, Pillows and Blankets.
I just heard from the Guinness rep. He's not coming. He's been fired in what he described as the world's biggest mistake.
There are 3 pillars to a great Community episode. Wacky, over-the-top antics that require a significant suspension of disbelief, a spoofing of a popular genre, and somehow after both of those, genuine, heartfelt moments of human connection. All 3 pillars stand tall in this episode, centered on a fight between what is arguably the best duo in the entire series. The entire episode is chronicled via a full-on Ken Burns-style war documentary spoof. It stretches the idea just far enough to where you could believe this might actually happen at a community campus.
The winter's here.
Turn it up, dog.
The winter's here.
It focuses on 2 friends coming to terms that maybe they're not 100% similar after all, and that's okay. See? 3 pillars. A genuine bond we've seen building throughout the show is being put to the test when Troy's blanket fort goes head-to-head with Abed's pillow fort, all the while utilizing the iconic archival footage and photographs typically shown in a Ken Burns documentary.
Pierce Hawthorne suffers broken glasses, a hurt finger, and erectile dysfunction, which, in his words, had never happened ever before that battle.
The best part about these kinds of Community episodes is seeing how they utilize the rest of the cast. Jeff obviously doesn't want to go to class, so he's just perpetuating the war like a politician would. Senior Chang is channeling his inner Tarantino, and Britta is being Britta, still attempting to not be useless. She does manage to snap one good picture at the very end. It's always fun to see how the writers somehow highlight the individual personalities of each cast member in a completely believable way, even when they're thrown in these extreme circumstances. Abed has a consistent need to feed that inner child inside of him, which, okay, I can relate to. I never want my imagination to die. I was pissed that they killed Bing Bong in Inside Out. Like, I'm a firm believer that you can be an adult and still have that childlike personality. Don't stop imagining, because the day that you do is the day that you die. Director Shapiro actually insisted that the cast act as if this was an actual war documentary being filmed. They used a Canon 5D for most of the footage portions of the episode, and it's narrated by Keith David, who will go on to star in the show's 6th season.
I have a brain the size of Jupiter. I'm nobody's 4th Ghostbuster.
It has the advantage of building upon an already established Blanket Fort episode, which is actually the next entry in our list. Number 9, conspiracy theories and interior design.
The ultimate Jeff Winger blow-off class, the one that doesn't exist.
This one's a fun one. I was surprised to see this so high on the view count, but then I quickly remembered how absolutely bombastically hilarious this shit is. I was intrigued by the interior design part of the title, but could not take my attention away from the conspiracy theories. We thought there would be some grand-scale government conspiracy or like a secret room at Greendale or maybe the return of Annie's boobs. We weren't ready for Community's absurd, over-the-top take on the convoluted double-cross trope seen countless times in literally everything we watch.
Well, guess what? Annie's got a gun.
And he just put the...
There is so much hilarity in this episode, I don't even know where to begin. I have to say, Dean Pelton's appearance in this literally gave me stomach pains from laughing so hard. Plus, it served as a little foreshadowing Easter egg to Pillows and Blankets. We slowly find out that there is indeed a conspiracy of epic proportions involving the mysterious Professor Professorson.
It's Dutch. I think it means professor.
I think it means poppycock.
There's information nobody is supposed to know, and the people behind it all will do anything to protect this secret. Meanwhile, our interior designers are building the most epic blanket fort ever seen by mortals, bringing a sense of childish wonder to grown-up adult life, like I mentioned previously. Community often uses Troy and Abed's shenanigans as the foundation for their genre-specific spoof episodes. You could argue that it's gotten a bit formulaic at this point, but in my opinion, if the formula always works, who cares? This is the general makeup of all classic Community episodes, and it never gets tiresome or wears itself out. Thor: Love and Thunder B-roll.
They are beautiful.
Yes, they are beautiful. They also scream quite a lot.
The Community formula is taking joy, adding positivity, and multiplying it with the general feeling of ridiculousness. And that's why it works. As the conspiracy plotline comes to a ridiculous close, Jeff and Annie set up a trap to teach Dean Pelton a lesson, which actually turns out to be Dean and Annie teaching Jeff a lesson about academic fraud, which actually turns out to be Jeff and the Dean teaching Annie about a lesson on friendship, which then actually turns out to be Annie and Jeff teaching the Dean about constantly teaching people lessons, which then turns out to be a lesson about fake guns.
Prop guns belong backstage.
And scene.
The formula is in full swing. Annie even goes off script and spices things up for the shippers by including some genuine reflection on her and Jeff's relationship. It's always interesting to me that the most realistic parts of these Community episodes are the brief asides that the characters have during these ridiculous situations. Short but meaningful. Number 8, cooperative calligraphy.
Not if that's a used Q-tip.
Whoa.
I don't know if you know this, but some people might call this a bottle episode. Although bottle episodes are supposed to be cheaply produced and restricted in scope to use as few cast members as possible, this entry packs a ton of great moments for all of the Greendale 7. I love this episode because the littlest thing turns into the biggest argument, which I feel like every friend group can relate to.
Whoever accidentally took...
Not accidentally. Accidents don't just happen over and over and over again, okay? This isn't budget daycare.
As a former editor of The Onion, writer Megan Gantz was the newest addition to the staff this season, and she penned the entire episode. See what I did there? She wanted to find the smallest thing that could break the camel's back and cause the group to sit in the study room for the entire episode. As such, it was the very relatable pen borrowing situation that we've all been guilty of or been a victim of. I've definitely been in the camp of letting people take my pencil, and I empathize extremely with Annie's ridiculous plight here. Seriously, how fucking hard is it to remember to just bring a pencil? And why are you repeatedly coming to school without a fucking writing utensil? If your parents can't afford it, hang on to the ones that I'm giving you every fucking week, Ben Midhofer. Sorry, I've been holding that in for years. Megan Gantz said that she had a week to write the script after the team had developed scene-by-scene breakdowns. Then she worked on set alongside director Joe Russo during filming. Joe Russo is one of those directors of those niche independent films you might not have heard about.
I don't even know who you are.
Community doesn't shy away on delivering big story continuity moments throughout the season. Here we learn that Abed charts the girls' menstrual cycles. Promise I don't do that. On purpose. So it turns out Shirley could have only gotten pregnant during the Halloween episode in which Troy witnessed her and Chang's random night of passion. The whole thing just snowballs as every character gets wrapped up into their search with their own unique justifications. Britta via her typical human rights violation shtick, Jeff only after Annie says to call off the search because he's hell-bent on being the one to see things through. It naturally gets to the point where everyone strips down to their undies to prove they don't have the pen.
Now what?
Everybody shake. Enough to dislodge.
I swear these episodes feel like old school normie skits we used to do. The Greendale 7 works so well because we see a little bit of ourselves in every character. Some of the worst parts, some of the most insecure parts, and what we all feel like are the best parts. I don't think anyone would have expected a bottle episode to be one of the best of the entire series. The worst part of this episode is that it does a great job of making us feel like we missed this amazing puppy parade that happened while all this was going down.
We're not gonna see it. We're not gonna see the puppies. I want to see the puppies.
No, to see a puppy parade.
Oh, and the pen? Hidden away with other trinkets by none other than Annie's boobs. Number 7, Debate 109.
Why am I crying? Would I accidentally listen to Come Sail Away by Styx again?
Back when all the season 1 titles could still be used in the 10 blank 101 course listing naming convention, Community was still finding its footing. That didn't stop them from delivering an instant classic, which, in my opinion, marks the first time the writers embraced the ridiculousness of what's possible at Greendale. The central theme of good versus evil is highlighted in the episode's main storyline as Jeff and Annie battle it out with City College in a championship debate to argue whether man is inherently bad or inherently good.
There were 23,000 kidney donations in America last year.
Yep, our side is arguing for the bad, so you can clearly start to see Dan Harmon's style of writing and kind of pessimistic worldview taking center stage. This is also City College's first appearance on the show as Greendale's bitter rival, with Jeremy Soulpatch Simmons playing the opponent. I honestly wish they'd brought Aaron Himmelstein back to play Jeremy because his line delivery was absolutely perfect.
0-4 wing up, kick that.
He's definitely got the mojo for this role. The good versus evil theme is present in the B and C storylines as well, though it may be a bit more subtle. Britta struggles to quit smoking, and Pierce offers hypnotherapy to cure her, with Chevy Chase delivering some genuinely hilarious slapstick moments, which used to be what he was known for.
I think I really hurt myself. Somebody help me! Britta, wake up! Why did I put you on your soul? Damn my talent!
Britta stays under hypnosis in an attempt to help Pierce feel good about himself. But is it a good thing when that notion itself presents as pity? Is it okay to secretly pity your friends if it makes them feel good about themselves? Or is brutal honesty the way to go?
I will not be pitied. Do not help me up.
Meanwhile, Abed is making independent films about his friends' lives because he feels he's just that good at predicting their behavior. I know somebody like this. This inadvertently leads these movies to predict the future as the circumstances in Abed's films begin to present themselves in reality. Again, is it okay to exploit this ability to make movies or skits about your friends just because you know you can? Things heat up as Jeremy goes after Annie's pill-popping past, so Jeff drops the biggest atomic bomb of a propaganda tool still widely used in debates today.
I realized Mr. Simmons' quote was from the great Franz Wickmeyer. Mine was just from a simple desert handyman named Jesus.
The teams go back and forth with single line readings that are meant to attribute good and bad. My favorite part is how there's like an audience watching this as if it's Game 7 of the World Series. The ending is pretty unpredictable unless you're Abed. He predicts that Jeff and Annie will kiss, which happens and ends up shifting the dynamic of those two characters for the rest of the show. See? Big continuity moments, always there. And I love a show that respects the memory of their audience. I think this is also the episode that got Annie's boobs trending on Twitter, which is why they used that as a joke later. We love you, Allison Brie. You took this shit like a champ, back when Twitter was an even bigger cesspool than it is today. Number 6. A Fistful of Paintballs, and for a few paintballs more.
How long has it been?
5 hours?
Too long.
The season 2 finale episodes are sharing this spot because although the tone shifts from a Sergio Leone spaghetti western into Star Wars, both episodes are directed with cinematic excellence by the Russo brothers, who, you know who they are. In fact, it was this very episode that made Kevin Feige ask them to direct Captain America: Winter Soldier. This double feature has way more character moments for the main cast when compared to the original Paintball episode. Abed is basically Clint Eastwood from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Hefe is Yul Brynner from Magnificent Seven, who you might also recognize from the Westworld movie. Troy is rocking a Sheriff Bart look from Blazing Saddles, all with their own Western-style intro character card, like an actual card. Annie and Britta have their moments too, but it's Shirley who really comes out as the biggest badass in this episode.
I gotta do everything myself.
Proving from this episode onward that Shirley becomes the alpha whenever Greendale is thrust into these wild situations. The dynamic within the study group at this point is deciding whether or not to keep Pierce as a friend due to his, Pierceness.
There's a bounty on your head, my friend.
Pierce.
It turns out that the cards used to introduce everyone actually reflected how they voted for this decision for Pierce to remain in the group. Chevy Chase takes center stage as well and gains control over Jeff as leader of the group. Funnily enough, Fort Hawthorne actually emitted a noxious gas in real life that delayed the filming of this episode. Filming this episode was no easy task. The cast and crew worked 16 hours a day, including time to film those behind-the-scenes segments. Community was truly a boot camp for these actors to up their skill and experience before moving on to greater projects. Shifting the tone into Star Wars was very much an on-the-fly decision. In that typical meta Community style, Abed calls dibs on Han, and we get some great Star Wars imagery. This shift benefits greatly by giving the show a chance to highlight their secondary characters to take part in the fight against City College. Everyone from Star Burns, Magnitude, Fat Neil, Neil, Leonard, Garrett, Vicky. Of course, personally, I love this episode because of the man in black himself, Ryder, aka James, the homie Sawyer Ford. The fact that they made Josh Holloway coin nicknames for everyone just like Sawyer does in Lost just shows how much the writers actually love my favorite show of all time. Number 5, contemporary American poultry.
Streets Ahead is verbal wildfire.
Does it just mean cool, or is it supposed to be like miles ahead?
If you have to ask, your street's behind.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to do a top 10 list. Before it became a regular thing for Community to spoof film genres, this one hit us out of nowhere with an amazing tribute to mafia movies. Though it borrows from a lot of them, it heavily focuses on the Martin Scorsese classic Goodfellas, which is perfect since clearly that's the best one. It goes so far as to play the exact soundtrack for the scenes being parodied. I think we can all relate to having that one addictive, delicious item served in our school cafeterias. For me, it was the spicy chicken patty on a bun. You had to be quick and get in line because that shit sold quicker than Taylor Swift tickets. So having that be the basis for which the study group creates an intricate criminal network was a stroke of genius. Using Abed's crazy organizational skills, the Greendale Seven slowly all get what they want. If you pause on the character's likes and dislikes sheet that Abed creates, you'll see early on how well he knows his friends. Jeff just wants control. Troy wants Annie's boobs. Britta wants to feel like she's making a difference. Shirley wants sexy dreadlocks man. And Pierce just wants to be streets ahead.
Your social skills aren't exactly streets ahead. Know what I mean?
I don't.
You're not alone in this case.
Funnily enough, I actually hear people say that now. Abed's narration is able to move this episode's pacing at breakneck speed. We cover a lot of ground from getting Starburns fired, which leads to Stargate, just like Watergate and not the sci-fi show, all the way to the group letting the power get to their heads. The best thing this episode does is create actual tension between Jeff and Abed, two great characters who up until this point were never at odds with one another. Jefe has his leadership position questioned, and we see that Abed, when using his intelligence for malicious purposes, can actually get scarily corrupt with power. When he goes too far and starts punishing the group for being too demanding, they run back to Jeff for a solution. The two then come to an agreement to help boost each other's weaknesses. Jeff will help Abed connect with people if Abed helps Jeff not be an asshole. Although there is some part of me that kind of wishes Abed stayed in control, because you can't help but admire the way he was able to do all that. Number 4, Anthropology 101, the Season 2 premiere.
And the last time I called on you, I kind of got what the Mako called dirt roaded. Using it.
This one comes as a bit of a surprise for me. Like, when I was looking at the view counts, I was wondering why this one in particular had skyrocketed over the years. It helps to understand how most shows deal with their sophomore seasons. So typically a show will throw a bunch of balls in the air on their first season finale, and then use the tension of what's going to happen to drag out all those plot threads throughout the entire course of their next season. Anthropology 101 bucks that tradition and charges at all their story threads head on, completely blank slating the rest of the season by the time the episode is done, and paving the way for what most people call Community's golden era. After facing criticism from the fans that last season finale was way too soapy, Dan Harmon decided it was best to not necessarily erase what happened, but more or less get it out of the way. You see Harmon do this in the Rick and Morty Season 3 premiere as well.
I'm not driven by avenging my dead family, Morty. That was fake. I'm driven by finding that McNugget sauce.
It's honestly kind of a flex that Community doesn't have to rely on those same old tricks and can simply push their story forward through absurdity and creativity rather than dangling plot threads. So what are those dangly little danglies? Britta and Jeff have sex on the study table. Britta professes her love for Jeff at the school dance, and Jeff kisses Annie at the very end. So, you know, love triangle shit. Britta has a fan club now because she's the underdog gal that poured her feelings and got rejected in the end. Jeff, being the narcissist that he is, doesn't like this and decides to profess his love back to her, which then wins the fan club over to him. It's a weird game of chicken. Both of these two, being as egocentric as they are, basically feign their love for each other in order to be the popular one in school. It goes so far that the two of them almost get married until Annie blurts out that she kissed Jeff.
When there's 3 sprinkled donuts, you don't eat one and then lick another.
Anyone object to us being referred to as donuts? No one?
So it's all sorts of a shit show at this point. The group is arguing amongst each other and they all basically break up. The next day, in anthropology, the students are to figure out which tool out of the 9 they were given for homework is the best tool for survival. Jeff decides to bust out one of his Winger special speeches and says the tool for survival is respect.
Ha! Gay!
Yes, this is where the iconic GIF/meme originated. Their professor, none other than the late great Betty White, promptly explains that all 9 of the tools put together create the perfect tool for survival, as she demonstrates on Jeff. She asks him to use respect to defend himself. Although seemingly random, there may be a point to be made here about our animalistic tendencies. When Annie confronts Jeff about their kiss, he says he was simply acting on his base animal urges. At the start of this episode, Professor Betty White asks the class what the difference is between man and animal. The exact question Jeff asks in the pilot episode when he's trying to win Britta's affection by uniting the study group. Professor White says the answer is tools. Back at the start of the show, you could look at the study group as Jeff's tools. He would use them and manipulate them for his own personal gain. So you could interpret that the professor's answer of all the tools combined as all the Greendale 7 combined. Jeff finally learned not to use them as tools, but to see that together they are the answer to what separates humans from animals. Being together, being more than the sum of our parts. So in a way, Jeff's answer of respect for one another is right, and also gay.
Ha! Gay!
Yeah. Number 3, remedial chaos theory.
Troy and Abbott's new apartment!
Before multiversal storytelling became all the rage it is today, we had the Greendale 7, Abed, and a single pair of dice. This is one of those episodes that people had been hyping up for me before I watched, and yet it still managed to over-deliver on my expectations. In fact, the final 3 in this list are all episodes I had prior knowledge of, but never for a second did that hinder my enjoyment of them. Based on a dice roll to decide who's going down to get pizza, we're thrusted into 7 different possible universes that manage to tell us something substantial about each character's influence. We're shown what their absence does to the group, and thus what they ultimately bring to this group. Using a method coined by Harmon called story circles, the writers intricately charted out each character's behavior and story on dry erase boards. Not a single second or line of dialogue is done without purpose here.
Did you guys know I had sex with Eartha Kitt in an airplane bathroom?
When Annie leaves to get the pizza, nothing batshit happens, but everything ends up kind of being puzzling. Troy finds a gun in her purse, Abed says the bathroom smells weird, and everyone ignores Shirley when she brings out her pies. Pierce gives a gift to Troy, but it immediately cuts to the next person, and we're left sort of wondering what's going on. So without the problem solver of the group, everyone is sort of left in a confused state as to what to do. When Shirley leaves, Jeff reminds everyone why they're not eating any of her pies. The gang is generally more disrespectful to each other without their maternal figure present. Nobody checks on her pies in the oven, so they end up getting burned, causing Shirley to leave upset. When you think of the apartment as the oven, you can see our gang as the pies, left in for far too long. I mean, Abed even catches Britta smoking in the bathroom. Everyone is overheated and debased to their worst personal habits. With Pierce gone, Jeff directs his bullying to Troy. This leads to Troy and Britta getting a little closer, as well as Jeff and Annie flirting in the kitchen. The absence of Pierce causes certain members of the group to see the similarities between each other, allowing them to grow closer emotionally. Pierce emotionally stunts the group throughout the course of the series. Britta leaves, and Pierce ends up tormenting Troy with a scary-looking troll doll housewarming gift. When Abed calls Pierce jealous because of this, the latter screams that he's lonely and crazy. So maybe Britta was actually a good therapist for the group after all, and their emotions run too wild without her. It's clear though that without the group, Britta would be even more unstable, as she decides to marry the pizza guy after being left alone for less than 2 minutes.
Wonder what happened to all those other timelines.
Wait, there are other timelines?
Troy leaves, and the darkest timeline is created. This really paints Troy as the heart of the group. Without his spark, everything devolves into chaos, which is why I'm so happy to announce that he's been confirmed for the Community movie, because the group needs its heart. And what good is the heart without the blood for which it pumps through? When Abed leaves, everybody gets brutally honest, leading to disdain towards each other. Jeff goes back to his animal instincts and kisses Annie, and then proceeds to make fun of her when she says he reminds her of her dad. Britta yells at Shirley and tells her about how they're not eating her pies. Troy and Pierce are arguing. Abed is clearly the thing that keeps these people functioning properly with one another. And Jeff? Oh, Jeff. Jeff is the buzzkill. He might be the de facto leader of the group, but he actively keeps everyone from having a good time. As soon as he leaves, Britta is able to actually sing Roxanne. Everyone joins along and is having the time of their lives. Jeff's egotistical nature ends up being the thing that drives conflict in the group, which makes for great stories and episodes, but without him, the brightest timeline is maintained. I love that upon rewatches of this episode, you can peel back more layers of how each person's absence affects the dynamic at play with the study group. It's peak community writing. It's the reason why people still say we're in the darkest timeline, and it always has me wondering what happened in all those other universes.
I lost my damn arm, and you're making fake beards!
Number 2, Modern Warfare.
With a prize for last man standing. Or last man in a wheelchair with no paint on it.
Or last woman.
Give it a rest, Britta.
God, this episode was such a blast to watch, for me to edit, and then to ultimately make a parody skit of, which ended up being basically a mini short film involving all the normies we had on the channel at the time. It's still one of my favorite skits I've shot, and this is one of my favorite episodes I can rewatch again and again. Director Justin Lin of Fast and Furious fame directs the most cinematic 22 minutes I've ever seen, evoking images of 28 Days Later, Die Hard, The Terminator, and just about every action movie you can think of from the last few generations. This one lived up to all the hype, and unfortunately I don't have much to say about it other than I was blown away by the level of polish this had. My favorite moments have to be Troy's exaggerated relief upon seeing Jeff again after what had probably been like 15 minutes. Shirley's death scene had me in tears, dude. I feel like not enough people give Yvette Nicole Brown credit for her comedic timing, but she fucking nails it here.
I'm going home, Britta.
I know, Shirley, I know.
No, seriously, I'm going home. Can you help me out?
And Chang, just everything Chang.
You're not even a student!
Wrong! Critical media literacy and politics of gender, biatch.
This is an episode I wish I could forget about and watch for the first time again. This makes me thankful as hell that reaction videos exist, because it's one I watch every single time another channel uploads. Not often mentioned is the fact that they finally bring the whole Britta Jeff will they won't they thing to a head. They even have the study group be a surrogate for the audience for how freaking tired we were of their shit. This episode fires on all cylinders, on all colors, and all over the walls and ceiling. That poor janitor, man.
Doing anything fun for the summer?
No plans.
Cool. Cool.
Number 1, yep, you guessed it, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
I won Dungeons and Dragons, and it was advanced.
Up until recently, Modern Warfare had this reaction beat in views, but this episode got even the filthiest of casuals into D&D and has taken over the number 1 spot. Maybe it's the advent of more and more people playing D&D. We got the movie, we got Critical Role and Vox Machina, or maybe it's the fact that this episode is no longer available because of literally 45 seconds of screen time that nobody was offended by and that nobody asked to be removed.
So we just gonna ignore that hate crime, huh?
Having finally played a D&D campaign myself and slowly making my way through Critical Role Campaign 1, I can see why this made D&D fans all around the world wet with joy. With nothing but sound effects, musical cues, and narration by the cleaning lady, a simple bottle episode in the study room turns into the most epic adventure the Greendale 7 embark on.
It's a critical hit.
What?
You've decapitated him.
I honestly don't think a single person walked away from this episode without the urge of wanting to play the game on their own. The gang finds themselves on the noblest of quests to help one of their fellow students, Neil, out of a spiral that is close to leading to self-harm or suicide. Pretty dark stuff, honestly, and I do feel like it's a subject matter they handle well here. They settle on playing Neil's favorite game with Abed as the DM, all with the goal of making Neil realize there's a lot for him to live for.
This is a role-playing game. It takes place entirely in our collective imagination. Ooh, yeah. Neil.
Then, everything changed when the Pierce Nation attacked. Pierce is evil as fuck, man. Dude ends up being the Thanos of this episode.
I can't hear you over the sound of me rubbing his sword on my balls.
I think having Pierce be over the top awful and shitty was a very purposeful move in order to make the study group's quest even more virtuous than it already was. I didn't find it cartoony as much as I found it necessary to make the story, the game, and Neil's plight all the more believable with way more stakes. The fact that they can inject comedy and fan service moments for all nerds in the middle of a heavy narrative speaks volumes to why this is the highest viewed reaction out of all the Community episodes. I really wanted to know the answer to Troy's question about the appropriate length of time for spooning after Hector the Well-Endowed described that epic lovemaking scene. If you watch that scene over, you can actually read Danny Pudi and Allison Brie's lips to see what they're saying. It's quite hilarious. In the end, Pierce's greed gets the best of him as the whole gang simply feels sorry for this gross, awful, lonely old man.
Pierce, I really worry about. At least for my turn, anyway.
They win the day and Neil's self-esteem, and we as the audience genuinely feel we went on this journey with them while barely having to leave the classic 4-camera setup. I do want to speak briefly about the reason this episode was cut from Netflix and all subsequent streaming releases. I understand why the likes of Hulu, Netflix, and Sony Pictures think they have to do stuff like this, but without the proper research, it ends up just being super tone deaf with the fans. If anyone was offended by the Chang scenes in this episode, I think a little pre-episode warning would have sufficed. Instead, millions of people are never even going to know this beautiful episode exists, all because of some political pandering. This story deals with real-world mental health issues, featuring everyone's favorite tabletop game, and shows us the power of storytelling through the audience's own imagination of what's going on. I think the good would have far outweighed the bad here if they chose to keep this in syndication. In my opinion, supporting the Black Lives Matter movement and being more conscious about racial sensitivity should be about moving forward with these communities to establish change, not pretending something doesn't exist to make yourself look better. This isn't the thing that's going to solve this country's problems. How about donating to a cause? How about starting their own campaign to fight systemic racism in this country? Pulling an episode because of a joke that some boomer-level execs failed to even understand is not the way to tell people you want to evoke change. I wonder how Tropic Thunder is able to stay on streaming networks with Robert Downey Jr.'s character being featured throughout the entire film versus the minimal level of screen time given to Chang here. There's currently a petition to get this episode reinstated, but it's been around since 2020, so I doubt it would affect anything if it reaches the goal. I don't know, maybe I'm being weird about this. What do you think? I'm fully willing to eat my own words if this is a bad take. I hate to end this awesome list and trip down memory lane on a dour note, but it's wild to me that the #1 most viewed reaction of this show also has no legal way of being viewed right now. Hopefully you bought the DVD or Blu-ray before this change, and hopefully you enjoyed my gush video on this amazing show that continues to hold up even today. Now we wait for that movie with glee. Thanks for watching. Like and share if you want us to do more of these because they're super fun to make, but also very time consuming. If you missed my Avatar essay, you can check it out right there. My name is Suraj, and I'll see y'all on the next one.